recording.
Right, thank you, Wendy.
You're live, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Welcome everybody, welcoming all members and the officers and public that are here to join us on the 2nd of February for our Planning Committee. I'm County Councillor Ruth Edwards and I chair this Planning Committee. But before I proceed, I am with great sadness to start the meeting that I'd like, and I must pay tribute to our fellow County Councillor David Dovey, who passed away last Wednesday morning. He was always a gentleman and was always very dedicated councillor, especially very enthusiastic member of this planning committee. David joined the County Council in 2004, like myself and many other members here today. His step-wife became a councillor then also for one term. He would always speak very fondly of her, his son Spencer and his wife, and David's wonderful two granddaughters that he was very pleased to have. He was very involved very much in his own ward at Chepstow Town Council, and also was chair of County Council in the past. David was great company with a sense of humour. He enjoyed our site visits when we were out and about doing site visits for planning. He was very willing to give of his time. He struggled, like a lot of us, with the new IT and doing things remotely. He had to get used to it, specifically remotely. He will be greatly missed by his colleagues, officers here, and as always, I must say he was the gentleman and a true friend to many of us. So please, would you mind joining me for 1 minute silence to reflect on David's life? Thank you all very much indeed. Right, thank you all now very much indeed. I felt I had to say something in tribute to David, but I'm sure our county chairman will also say something when we have our next full council, as he was so dedicated to the planning committee. Well, I have to again read out what I've been instructed to do because we're doing this remotely, and I expect, as you'll gather today, I'm not in County Hall chairing the planning committee, I am at home. So welcome you all to this committee meeting. The meeting is held in accordance with emergency legislation that enables the council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the council constitution, and ensures that council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being streamed live and to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your camera and mute your microphones when you are speaking directly to the committee to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the Members' Code of Conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they were in a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make their request clear in the area, and I will invite them to speak. And I'm sure you all know by now that you can show that your hand is up, and I will then request you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you would then microphone and switch your camera back on. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirement to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast their vote due to technical issues. The decision of the committee will still remain valid. Thank you all very much to be patient. I think I'm getting used to reading this out, and hopefully we will see an end to doing it by the end of the year. So we'll now go to the agenda, and though I might remind you to start with that the one application that has been published on the agenda, and this is on page 43 to 62. This is development 01438. That has been withdrawn from the agenda for this afternoon, so that won't be discussed today. So first of all, I hope you've had the email that was sent around earlier regarding that Craig wishes to speak to the committee as soon as we have finished the meeting. So number one on the agenda, apologies for absence, please. We've had one from Councillor Howell. Any more, please, Wendy?
Chair, there's one more apology from Councillor Evans.
Right, thank you, Richard. You're on board, and thank you, Richard, for sending the agenda out for me. Greatly appreciated. Declarations of interest, please. None. Thank you. Councillor Alan Davis and Jim Higginson. Councillor Higginson, please, could you turn your cameras off? I'll now go to number 3 on the agenda to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting. Does anybody have anything to raise for accuracy? If not, could somebody please move the minutes?
Move them out.
That sounds like Councillor Higginson. Do you have a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Right, thank you, Councillor Murphy. So that's been approved and seconded, and I will sign them when I go into County Hall. So the first one, application today to be considered. This is application 02079 at Roggett. I believe, Amy, you're presenting this to the meeting.
Yes, good afternoon.
Have we got anybody speaking on it, Amy? I don't think so, is there?
I don't think we have. Craig, Phil, can we just confirm that? I'm pretty sure we haven't.
There's no public speaking on this item, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Phil. Right, Amy, I'll leave that for you then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're just going to get the presentation up. Just a second. There we go.
Thank you, Amy.
So thank you, yes. My name's Amy Longford. I'm the Heritage and Area Applications Manager. So this application is for the 2019 02079 for the construction of 2 detached dwellings and the associated external works and the relocation of the previously approved plot 12. The application is presented to committee on the request of delegated panel. The site forms part of the Ifton Manor Farm and is within development boundary of Roggett. Plan of permission has been granted for the development of the wider site, and this application relates to the southeast corner of that site, and in particular the 3 plots edged in red on the next slide. The application seeks permission to reorientate plot 12 as part of the approved plans and the 2 additional dwellings as stated. So if we just move to the next couple of slides. There we go. So in the area there, so that shows the red line boundary of the current application and the blue line boundary as part of approved the 2015 application. I had 1 plot on the site there in this bottom corner. So the application was originally reported to the Council's delegated panel on the 22nd of July in 2020 in line with the appropriate protocol. Following consideration of the report, members resolved to approve the application subject to the applicant entering into the Section 106 agreement to secure the commuted sun for affordable housing. During the processing of the 106, a public objection has been received, and this relates to the construction works which have already commenced on site and raises concerns that development was not built in accordance with the approved plans. The objector states that this results in an increased level of overshadowing and overlooking detriment to their amenity. In light of the new objection being received, and prior to the subject Section 106 being completed, The application was returned to the Council's delegated panel on the 13th of January 2021 for the consideration. At that meeting, members resolved that the application should be presented to the Planning Committee for full determination. As explained in the officer's report, the principal development has been established as the site is within the development boundary and already has the benefit of permission for residential development. The application seeks 2 additional units and a reorientation of one of the already permitted units. Therefore, the principle of development is established, subject to the usual planning material considerations. The next slide shows the properties in more detail. We can see the parking arrangements and the 3 properties side by side. So the proposed additional, if you can just move to the next slide as well, please. If the proposed additional units and reorientation of the 3rd have been considered in relation to all of the material considerations, specifically in terms of design, you can see on this slide that the proposed additional units are designed to match the existing scheme in materials and design. The appearance of the buildings are different to those of Chestnut Drive. However, they are not considered to be out of character or inappropriate within the context, and so are considered to comply with the relevant design policies in the LDP. It's also considered that there is sufficient space within the enlarged plot to accommodate these 2 additional units. The proposals are in keeping with the surrounding area, and the impact on the wider landscape is considered acceptable in the wider street scene. The western boundary has a number of TPOs between that, the site and Chestnut Drive, and no part of the development is within the route protection zone. To note, since the approval from delegated panel in 2020 in the summer, there has been an application to prune the TPOs, and this was received and work was carried out in line with those proposals. The view you can see here is in relation to looking from Chestnut Drive in towards the site where these trees are TPO'd. In conjunction with the ecological management of the larger scheme, the proposal also included mitigation and enhancement that were considered by the Council's ecologists, who raised no objections. The application is over the threshold for sustainable drainage and will also require a full SUDS approval. Highways have not raised any concerns in relation to the development, and the additional units are not considered to cause any harm to the existing highway network or that within the site over and above the current approved situation. And sufficient parking can also be accommodated on the site. This is a view looking from the current development towards the properties of Chestnut Drive and Yew Tree Rise, the 2 trees there on the right hand side. And the next view. This is a view looking from 17 Chestnut Drive, property adjacent to new properties being built. You can see the roof line there of the new building under construction, which is subject to this application. So in terms of the impact on amenity with the neighbouring property, specifically these are 17 Chestnut Drive to the west and Yew Tree Rise to the south. The rear gardens of the properties along Yew Tree Rise border the site. However, the substantial gardens provide sufficient space with the side elevation of the 3rd unit, which will not create any overlooking or overbearing impacts. In relation to the property with Chestnut Drive, if we keep going through, there should be an aerial photograph that will come up. Here we go. That there is a 21-metre gap between the existing property and the habitable rear window and the proposed rear habitable window of the new dwelling being constructed. You can see the blue arrow there showing from the existing property towards the top of the screen and the proposed under construction 3 dwellings towards the bottom of the picture. The next site shows the ground levels on site, which show the rear garden of the existing dwelling, 17 Chestnut Drive, is at a lower level, which is 2.5 metres lower than the ground level of the proposed new dwelling. Whilst the building is set in an elevated position, the 21-metre intervening distance and existing protected tree cover in between is considered to be acceptable. However, in order to enhance the application, both in terms of biodiversity and in the interest of protecting neighbour amenity, a condition is proposed to control a scheme of landscaping to safeguard amenity of the area and in compliance with LDP policy GI1. So the next slide just shows the proposed 3 units in relation with 17 Chestnut Drive, just giving a little bit more context there. So in summary, it's considered that proposed development is in line with the current LDP policies, is a natural extension to the approved residential scheme in which it adjoins. The proposal, subject to the conditions outlined in the officer's report, specifically in relation to landscaping, ensure that the development is acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. I believe the local ward member is, I believe, Councillor Guppy, but she's not a member of the planning committee. So, Tony Easton, I see you've got your hand raised, so presumably you're a joining ward member. So if you'd like to comment now, first of all, please. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I and David Evans are the adjacent ward members. I've seen this aerial view of this job. I'm rather concerned that the building is virtually completed, and we've been asked to approve it. The initial plan was to put 1 property on that site. With the permission of that development going on the site, there's now been the need to, on the builders way forward, to put 3 properties there. If you look at this site, it's a mishmash of properties, all crunched up into a site which I don't think is, quite frankly, very amenable to the people living around. Yes, there's 21 metres between the 1 property and another property, but on the other end, we can see that the property is 1 property, I don't know what numbers they are, is virtually sitting in the next door's garden, and that's about 8 metres away from the property, or that property. And in the frontage, where you got the car parking, it's all there doesn't seem to be any space for a footpath, and there's a 13-metre gap between the property there and the property opposite. So how this fits into the street scene, I don't know. I know the principals agreed to put a property there, and that gave the developer opportunity to change it. I believe there's overlooking problems. I believe there's overdevelopment. I believe that had this been an infill site, the committee would have probably rejected it. What concerns me is that it's been the decision is to give an approval on the basis of 3 properties which are built without approval. They were not approved at the beginning to be built as they are at the moment. So I've got concerns that that having gained development rights, the developer can then inbuild extra properties at the expense of the surrounding area. I just don't think it fits in, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Amy, do you wish to comment anything that was raised then by Councillor Easton before I go on to the next?
I think quickly, if you just go back to the aerial photograph, that's really helpful. I think what we need to think about is the application that is put in front of us. The previous application for the residential scheme was approved and considered acceptable and has been carried out as such. So we are simply just looking at these 3 properties here. The application did go to the delegated panel and was approved subject to the 106. Now, obviously, the developer has started on site with construction and has done that at their own risk, but the application is considered on its own merits and not on the basis that they have already started construction.
Right, thank you, Amy.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Easton.
How do you base what is your basis for the guidance on rules of overlooking? What is your basis on the rules of guidance for car parking and accessibility to the rest of the community? I've got concerns that the 2 properties on the end, the 2 together, as was stated in a previous committee meeting, there's no space there to get a wheelie bin through. I'm really concerned that those 2 properties, particularly properties, could cause a problem, or may well cause a problem for the residents in the future. I do have concerns about the overlooking. I do have concerns about constraints within the site. I do have concerns that the developments that are going on at the moment are higgledy-piggledy. They got no acquiescence to the street scene. on the basis that principals agreed to put a property there, the developer can come along and do what they want to afterwards. I'm concerned that the property started being built in defiance of the council's policy at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. I now take Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just a straightforward question for Amy, really. It's always been a principle that even though we don't like it, if something comes up which is retrospective, and we would have given it permission in the first place, we have to give it retrospective permission. So if this application came forward originally like this, would you have been happy with the proposals, or are we having to make the application fit, so to speak? Just to settle my mind.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do you wish to comment, Amy?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. Yes, the applicant did come forward with the plans, and they did go to delegated panel for their consideration prior to any works commencing on site. So they were considered at that panel and were considered acceptable, subject to the legal documents being signed for the 106. So this application has been considered by panel on its own merits, and yes, it was considered acceptable.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Louise Brown, please.
Yes, thank you. Could you show the aerial photograph again, please, on the screen, if that's possible? Yeah, I mean, I don't know this particular area, but looking at that and looking at those 3 dwellings crammed into that site, it doesn't seem to align with the properties either on the left or on the right. It seems as if there is an argument there for overdevelopment of the site. They seem to be put together in the building line of them seems a little bit odd as well, because they don't seem to be quite straight to me. So I think it does look to me like there is an argument of DES1 on overdevelopment. Looking at this just on its own merits, obviously, and not taking account of any of the other factors, it looks like those properties are squashed in to that site out of line with the surrounding properties, and therefore out of line with the street scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Maureen Powell, please. Everything seems to be frozen my end, so I don't know if you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
yeah.
I can. Thank you.
Right, yes. Yes. Looking at it there, it doesn't look as though you could even walk between those 2 houses. How would you maintain them? You know, when you wanted to paint them, they look just squashed up together. But to my mind, it doesn't look quite right at all. I mean, there's more land. Why do they have to squash them right tight like that? I wouldn't be happy with it, I'm afraid. Not with those 2. I would think much better to have just had one, one in their place, those 2. But when I go, can you put me back to the original outline planning? Was that for 3 then, the outline planning? Do you know? Whoops. Where are we? Yeah.
I must admit, looking at it as an aerial view is very different to when you're down on ground.
Yes. This is the sad part about the fact that we can't go, we can't go and have a look at it. I know we have videos, but it's not the same as being there. And no, that's just what the aerial view does make it look very crammed together, those 2 houses. And it does I wouldn't be entirely happy with that.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Roger Harris.
Thank you, Chair. just looking at the slide we've got in front of us, you can see the red outline, and you can see where the 3 plots are. That is totally consistent with anything that we would have before us. There are plenty of amenity space, so I don't think that argument stands. The plots are certainly big enough, and if we turned it down and it went to appeal, then goodness knows what it might cost us. And if you carry on to look at the garden views from the objector, that's the view. Now, I might be a bit, well, I won't say it, but I mean, I can hardly see the dwelling behind. I can't see any windows there, and if you look, it's winter. There's no leaves on the trees, so I just rest my case. Obviously, I'm part of the delegated panel, so I'm not going to say any more. Wait and see what other members come up with, whether or not they want to put it for approval. But I'll hold my case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you also, Councillor Harris. As I know, and all of you will know, I'm on the delegated panel as well. And, you know, it does look very different looking at it as an aerial view to what we visualised it and took account of when we were looking, as Councillor Harris said, across that garden. Who else wishes to comment now as well, please?
Could I just jump in and answer some of the bits that have raised?
Then I'll ask Craig to come in. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point that's made. On plan, it looks different. You're not going to be viewing the development from an aerial point of view. It's highly unlikely any of us are going to get up there in a drone and see it from there. So we will all be viewing that development from the ground, and it does look slightly different in that context. I think it's important to note that the intervening distances, the 21 metres, I think it was mentioned earlier, where that comes from, and it is in line with the infill guidance, 2019 supplementary planning guidance on infill. It does meet that guidance, and also the planning parking standards. It meets those guidance as well, fully adopted by the council. So it is fully in line with our SPG.
Thank you ever so much for explaining that, Amy. I do appreciate that, because it does give everybody the full picture then. Craig, do you wish to come in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was literally going to say what Amy has eloquently said herself in terms of the application before us members today is obviously looking at the impact on the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties. The 21 metres is sufficient and acceptable, and if this application was before us and it wasn't built, that's what we'll be looking for in terms of an amenity distance for neighbouring property. So it meets that requirement. Also, in terms of the street scene, if you notice that these properties are tucked by, so I appreciate what some members have mentioned in terms of overdevelopment, but in terms of the impact on the street scene, this would be very, very limited. Views and public vantage points for this development is limited. So as outlined in the report, officers are recommending the application's approved, and if this application was before us without being built, we'd certainly be recommending approval in that instance as well, just to clarify that point. But Amy's already said the points I was going to mention, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And that is how we as a delegated panel would have looked at it anyway when we saw the plans earlier. I'll now take Councillor Murphy, then Councillor Easton again, then Councillor Webb, and then Councillor Brown. So to begin with, it is Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair, and Craig has just given me my opening line. Even though I don't think we generally like this, we've got to be practical about it. It would have been recommended for approval, as Craig and Amy have said. I know that site. We've been there in the days when we were allowed to go out in the bus, I can't see any reason why we can't approve it. If it went to appeal, I'm sure it would get approval. So I'm going to propose that we approve it.
Right, so you're moving approval, but I will take the other comments first of all, Councillor Murphy. Right, Councillor Eason, please. Or Councillor Eason, do you want to go after Councillor Webb?
Yes, I'll defer, yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Webb?
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, bearing in mind the comments that have been made, and also there's no objection from the local member or from the Community Council, I would like to second Councillor Murphy's proposal, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Eason, you're next to speak, and then Councillor Brown. Councillor Eason?
Sorry, Chair, yeah, just one question of the officers. Can you explain the supplementary guidance on the 30 metres and the 8 metres, which is the other side of the properties? They're inside the supplementary guidance of 15 metres, aren't they?
Sorry, can we clarify which distances we're referring to then? Maybe we could get the site plan up and have a quick look.
Right, if you look the frontage where the front of the house is, opposite to the houses opposite is about 13 metres, and the end one, which is butting it into the next door's garden, is about 8 metres from windows on that side. So 8 metres on one side, 13 on the front, and yes, 21 on the back. I'd like to see what the supplementary guidance rules are, exactly what they are, how you apply them.
So the supplementary planning guidance, I've got a copy here in front of me.
I know supplementary guidance rules exactly.
Yes, so you've got, so we're talking the front elevations of the properties in relation to the ones that have already been constructed. Yeah, yep. I'm sorry, virtually it's difficult to kind of pick up on where you are with the distances.
Right, can you see the car on the aerial photograph? The car from the front of the property opposite the car to that property is about 13 metres. And on the end property, which is butting into somebody's garden, from the windows of that end property, it's about 8 metres to the property which has already been occupied.
So the gable end of the property that's had approval and constructed, there's a small bathroom window in there. So the distances in there from side to front elevation should be all set out in the supplementary planning guidance. But so there's concerns in relation to, but I think we need to remember that these properties have already been built and have already got permission.
Yes, I understand that, but I would like some consistency of supplementary guidance rules on the 15 metres. I just want some consistency. It doesn't seem to be consistent to what the rules say. On the back end is 21 metres, but on the other side you've got an 8 metre one and a 30 metre one. There doesn't seem to be consistency in the way that you apply these rules.
I think the rules are applied consistently, and I think but it is each case on its own merits, and we need to think about intervening distances and other mitigating factors that would make some of these distances more acceptable than others. In this instance, I would consider those distances to be acceptable. You're looking at front of properties onto side of properties there, so there's no overbearing or overlooking issues from windows into other habitable rooms. I think in relation to this property and this site, it meets the planning guidance, it meets the supplementary planning guidance. And I think, as Craig mentioned earlier, we're here to consider this application in view of the objection that's been raised, and that's in relation to Chestnut Drive and the property to the rear, which does fully meet the planning guidance and the supplementary planning guidance.
But we as members are here to consider all aspects, even if we haven't got objections. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Councillor Eason. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you. Is it Councillor Woodhouse next?
Well, your hand had been up for quite a while, or is it an old hand?
Oh no, it was an old hand. I don't know why it wasn't ticked off.
Oh, sorry. Right, Councillor Woodhouse. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that as this has been to delegated and approved by delegated, and all the sort of objections raised to this, the work starting and the points have been covered well by the officers, I think, about the objections raised since it went to delegated and the work started, be it prematurely. I'm quite happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. Now, Councillor Brown, if you'd like to come back in briefly, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point about the distances for the property in this aerial view on the left-hand side of the 21 metres, but I think the point is still within the site itself. It seems to be very crammed in comparison with the property on the right-hand side. And I think obviously you've mentioned about the distances and you know, it being not exactly next to it is still extremely close to that property that's on the right-hand side of the picture. So I think even if you didn't take account of the issue of the objection within the internal site, it seems to be crammed to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody else wish to comment? Right, Councillor Murphy has moved for approval and seconded by Councillor Webb. I think I should go to the vote for that. We'll have it in the chat bar so you can vote in a moment, members.
We've had 9 responses, Chair. I believe that there are 13 on the call at the moment, which means that there are...
Madam Chair, I haven't seen the chat bar for voting.
Councillor Higginson, do you verbally wish to say how you would vote?
I'm in favour.
You're up for approval?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Councillor Clark, have you the same problem? Councillor Clark? I cannot hear you, Councillor Clark.
That's because I was muted. Yes, I'm approval, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Clark. Denzil, you wish to announce what the result is,
yes.
Please?
So that's 12 responses in total now. 10 are for approval, including the 2 verbal ones, and 2 are against approval. There are no abstentions, so that's quite clearly passed.
Right, thank you for that, Denzil. We'll now go on to the next application. Phil, are you presenting this?
I am, Chair, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Phil. It's 00800 at Wainfield Lane, Gwehelog. And I believe once you've done the presentation, Phil, once you've introduced yourself, Councillor Smith wishes to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Philip Thomas. I'm Development Services Manager with Monmouthshire County Council. This application is, as you said, it's DM 2019-00800, demolition of existing bungalow and outbuildings and replacement with two-storey dwelling houses with altered driveway and access at Homestead Wainfield Lane, Gwehelog. So going back, members may recall this application was presented to committee back in March 2020 with a recommendation for approval. The application was approved subject to a Section 106 agreement and an additional condition to ensure that foul drainage details were acceptable. So it was approved subject to those issues. In the light of protracted discussions involving the applicant's agent and the local community regarding the ability to secure an acceptable foul drainage scheme, it was considered appropriate to report this matter to committee for members' decision. So the proposed foul drainage will consist of a private treatment plant for each of the new dwellings, with discharge fields shown on the submitted plans, which I'll show you in a moment now. So the first photograph, that's Homestead, the bungalow on the left-hand side, and a newer property has been built to the right of it. Sorry. That's a view from Wainfield Lane looking through a gap over the hedge, with the bungalow to the left-hand side and the newer dwelling to the right. So the proposal is to demolish the bungalow and build two plots in the plot that's relinquished then by Homestead. And that's a shot looking through past the old garage of Homestead. And that's Waynfield Lane itself. The plot would be to the left of that. That's an OS plan showing Homestead in relation to the adjoining property. There's large properties on the other side, the southwestern side of the lane. That's Homestead, the survey drawing. And those are the two plots. So I'll show you this plot, this photograph. So the proposed foul drainage is, as I said, two individual treatment plants, one for each dwelling. The drainage discharge fields, the soakways, are shown on the submitted drawings. To the rear of plot 2 in its garden, that would be the drainage field. So that's in the right-hand side of that particular slide. And then the plot 1 would issue then to the soakaway in the front of the plot 1 there near the driveway there. The applicants, the driveway would be permeably paved with a soakaway underneath the driveway and turning area, and that would manage the roof and other surface water. The applicant's drainage consultant has confirmed that based on the number of bedrooms, 1.05 cubic meters of effluent per plot a day is the discharge rate from the treatment plants. And a copy of the infiltration tests results for the site have also been provided. The Council's Sustainable Drainage Officer has reviewed the proposed drainage and has stated that it is acceptable in principle. The proposal surface water drainage will require separate SAB approval, and which has been already applied for. In addition, the Council's building control inspectors have also indicated that the foul drainage proposals will meet the requirements of the building regulations, and they've commented as follows. Any package treatment plant is to be at least 7 meters away from the building, which in this case they are. The drainage fields are to be at least 10 meters from each building, which they are, and that the drainage layout proposals appear satisfactory on the attached plans with regards to the layout. NRW have also reviewed further details submitted and have commented that they are satisfied the drainage fields for the foul sewers for the foul sewerage is now acceptable, being at least 2 meters from the boundaries of each plot. The percolation tests are also acceptable to NRW. Plot 2 has had its boundary revised to include all of its drainage fields within its curtilage. While this reduces the rear garden area of plot 1, as you can see on the slide there, that garden would still be reasonable in size and amenity value. Despite the concerns of neighbours, there are no objections to the foul drainage proposals from the key consultees in this instance. We would not agree with the neighbour comment about the proposal being considered and advertised as a departure, in that it is for 2 dwellings and not 1. The neighbour argues that the 2-unit scheme is not infill development. It is respectfully pointed out that this element was fully debated at the March 2020 committee, where members agreed with officers that the scheme was acceptable in respecting the character of existing residential development along Waynfield Lane. In this regard, I'll just show you again the slides that show the development in context that members agreed in 2020. So that's the elevational details, which show a well-designed, crisp, clean set of elevations with traditional materials that will fit in well in that area. That's the other plot. Again, similar comments to what I just said. That's it in context, so it's slightly blurred, but it shows the adjoining property that you saw in the initial slides and the photographs, and these would be the 2 dwellings sitting alongside that with similar ridge lines. And then those are the summary of the issues. So in relation to the comments received from local residents regarding the site boundary, the applicant has confirmed that the site boundaries shown on the plans submitted are accurate. We've no reason to dispute that. We'd recommend approval subject to conditions, including the revised drainage condition that is set out in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. It might sound strange, but when people talk about foul drainage, they think it's dirty water. But of course, it's gone through the 2 treatment plants respectively for the both dwellings. So that needs to be clear rather than thinking it's not water that can be released. I believe Councillor Smith wishes to speak on the application, and then I believe is there somebody from the County Community Council also wishing to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 2 statements to read out, one from Gwahella Community Council and then one response from the applicant.
Right, thank you. So you'll read that out then afterwards, after Councillor Smith, Craig.
Yes, Madam Chair,
right,
thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you very much, Chairman. We have the rural areas, we know about these waste treatment things, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yes, very much. Members are well aware of the concerns with drainage and runoff in Wainfield Lane, and Monmouthshire County Council must be absolutely correct about the requirements and ensure that if this application is approved, that they are complied with absolutely, because we do have some very well informed local people who are concerned. It's been an interesting application because the original location showed the houses original 90 degrees. Am I coming across? They've actually been shifted and it's a better alignment. It gives less overlooking of the adjacent house, Tí Cwch. When Tí Cwch was built, there was an original application with 1 ridge height and then another submission after an approval, and regrettably the ridge height was higher. This is a very prominent location, Chairman, and I would like consideration of lowering slightly the level of those ridge heights. It's a very prominent position. There was an application many years ago for Tí Gwyn Farm, and it was refused at appeal because it was a very prominent location, and there was also a fear that it was just one property, there would be requirements for infill, etc. But particularly the prominence, the height of these buildings, it would be very good if that could be considered slightly. So looking at that, concern with the drainage, there has been concern. The relocation to accommodate the additional infill dwelling. There's been a concern about the dimensions of the plot. I can't get up to see these things at the moment, Chairman. I know the plot, but there have been concern that the dimensions of the plot have changed, and as the location of the proposals, but that's a better location from the point of Tí Cwch next door. I consider the section 106 that we require, that's presumably just on the infill dwelling, not a replacement dwelling. It's a very modest contribution. And also, I had never realised that if within 6 months the section 106 isn't complied with, that the proposal is then refused. So there's another thing that interests me, listening to the planning applications. I presume sprinkler systems are installed automatically with all new developments now. Is that part of the legislation? Can we be clear about that, please? So it's been an interesting development, an interesting one. I would ask one thing, please, another chairman. It's taken 30 years to get Wainfield Lane resurfaced. Please, could we have a bond so that the road is not mangled when if these developments should go ahead? 30 years to achieve a decent surface, please don't let it spoil at this state. I'd like confirmation that sprinkler systems are required now. And also, if members could consider a slight reduction in the ridge height, I think that would be good. There was a comment in another report about the dominance of buildings in this area. And going down Wainfield Lane, you as a planning authority have been very good in succeeding in getting a gentle progression down so that you do not see developments from the main road. It's been an interesting development. I know the concern. You almost think, well, this is a buy one, get one free situation. I don't envy you your decisions, members, and thank you for listening, and thank you for allowing me to speak, Chairman. I thought when I ticked the sort of yes, I'm coming to the meeting, I'd said yes, so thank you very much, folks.
Right.
No more.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. You're always contributing greatly in your ward when there is an application, so we do all appreciate that indeed. And also, we are mainly concerned about the drainage today, as Phil will elaborate on. But yes. Maybe, as you said, we have been up there to the site before. Yeah. So whether they could be lowered in the landscape at all, I do not know. But we do have somebody else now who wishes to speak, unless Craig or Phil wants to come in to say anything about what Councillor Smith has said.
Yeah. That reduction in height is achievable, even from my modest background. Thank you, folks.
Right. Thank you, Val.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll pass to Phil to respond to local members' concerns after the public speaking. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yeah, that's fine, Craig. You go ahead.
Right, so this is a statement to be read out from Gwahelog for our Community Council. Further response to the planning application regarding planning application DM 2019-00800. The Council responded to this application on 29th of June 2020 when the members unanimously objected on the following grounds. This is an attempt to fit two properties into one plot, which itself has been subject of previous splitting. This will make inadequate sized plots and be out of character for what is essentially a rural setting. The original plan for the house to be built one in front of the other has been rejected by planning, and new plans were submitted with the houses adjacent to each other to comply with the ribbon effect for the rest of the lane. However, the point remains that there is insufficient land space for two houses on this tiny plot. Members were concerned that the proposed development would compromise the privacy of another adjacent house. The council were and are concerned with the proposals for drainage on this land, which is predominantly Monmouthshire clay. The last point certainly has not been clarified by subsequent tests which were undertaken following a long period of dry weather. We remain very concerned by the proposals for foul drainage. We are concerned by the apparent confusion over boundaries. There appears to be slight but significant inflation of the plot size. This could be important in respect to meeting the requirements for drainage runoff. We feel that development might run counter to policy LPDH3 because this is not an infill development. A house will be demolished and subsequently replaced by two others. This extends the building boundary of Wainfield Lane into open countryside. That's dated the 28th of January 2021, and that statement is Cohelag's Community Council's statement is in the late correspondence for planning committee members as well. I also now have a statement from the applicant, Madam Chair, if you're okay to me to speak that up.
Yes, proceed please, Craig.
So this is a statement from the applicant in response to the comments and the objections that have been raised to the planning application. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to respond to the issues relating to the drainage at the above development. The comments have been made some assumptions. At the time of writing, we have not received any additional objection from Community Council and have summarised that these are based on the adjoining neighbours' objections, who I understand is now a Community Councillor. The proposals submitted for the surface water drainage have now been accepted and approved by Monmouthshire County Council SAB officers following extensive testing by our client specialists. The foul drainage proposals have been vetted and approved by Monmouthshire County Council building control officers and Natural Resources Wales, who have no objections to the proposals. The location of the sewage treatment plant and outfall drainage meet current regulations, and each dwelling will be served separately by a Collage Biotech 2 7-person population tank, which meets the new guidance. For the avoidance of doubt, the septic tank serving the existing bungalow will be grubbed up and removed. It has also confirmed that the foundations of the bungalow will also be removed. The infiltrate drainage proposed for the sewage treatment tanks fully complies with the building regulations, and this is supported by Monmouthshire County Council's building control officers. For the avoidance of doubt, and contrary to recent comments from the neighbouring parties, the soakways are located a minimum of 5 metres from the lane, which complies fully with building regulations. The soakaway will not have a detrimental impact on the lane, unlike the adjoining property, which allows surface water to drain freely from the drive onto the highway service. Properties on the opposite side of the development will not be affected, as the drainage of the development will be contained on site as approved by Natural Resources Wales and Building Control. It is agreed that surface water should not be allowed to drain from the site and affect other properties, which is the existing problem caused by recently constructed properties on the northern side of Wainfield Lane. Members should be made aware from the drainage proposals for this site will not impact on the properties at lower level or the lane itself, and this is fully supported by Natural Resources Wales and Building Control. DEI 365 is a standard method for testing to ensure that the ground is suitable for natural drainage, allowing natural dispersion and attenuation. The tests have been undertaken and approved by NRW. Members should be aware, contrary to the Community Council and neighbouring parties, that the scheme has been adjusted to meet local authority building control approval and also undergo vigorous scrutiny and approval by Natural Resources Wales. Again, contrary to the comments raised by the adjoining parties and the Community Council, the boundaries have not been falsified. The original topographical survey indicated the face of hedgerow. The hedgerow has been thinned recently and the stock fence exposed, which corresponds exactly to our client's land ownership boundary. That has been clearly identified on the amended site plan, which was surveyed and prepared by a professional land surveyor. And therefore, there is no falsification whatsoever of the site boundaries. The proposal is wholly within our client's ownership and the drainage field fits well within our client's site boundaries, verified and approved by NRW and local authority building control officers. NRW require the foul drainage field to be at least 2 metres from boundaries and not 2.5 metres as stated by objectors. Therefore, in summary, the position of the foul treatment plan complies fully with building controls, Part H, and is supported by Monmouthshire County Council building control officers. The percolation testing method has been approved by Natural Resources Wales in accordance with BERE 365. Building regulations state that the treatment plan can be 7 metres from the property and not 10 metres as stated by objectors. As requested by members of the Planning Committee on the 3rd of March 2020, details of the drainage were to be approved prior to the issue of the approval notice. The drainage details have been provided and approved by NRW and building control officers and SAB officers, and therefore there is no reason why the Planning Permission should not be issued. The Section 106 agreement was signed on the 4th of August in respect of affordable housing contribution. Our clients would like to conclude with this final statement. As can be seen, all of these issues arise from Mrs. Backman, who became a member of the Community Council 3 months ago. It's evident that her own personal opinions aren't represented by the community, which has been stated throughout. As a new family to the area, we're very quickly losing confidence in our Community Council and the work they do may be subsequently devalued. As stated by the Local Government Act 2000, the task of any community council is to identify the needs and aspirations of the community and make decisions that will lead to appropriate action. At some point, this might involve setting priorities on the competing or conflicting needs of different sectors of the community. We have gathered results from past sessions in the relevant fields and we approval from the relevant bodies, yet we are still being verified by the community councillor whose opinion has no factual grounds. That is the end of the statement from the applicants, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Craig. Councillor Smith did mention the contribution, which didn't seem to be an awful lot considering the size of the property, but I knew it has to be, you know, verified, or it all sort of regulations, so it didn't seem a lot to me. But anyway, is
possible to come in there, Chair? Just to
yes, Phil?
Yeah, because Councillor Smith raised various points. It's important to remember that members have actually approved this scheme back in March 2020, and yes. The details of the scheme haven't changed, other than they've submitted foul drainage details. So the actual design, height, mass, scale of the dwellings, garaging, and the driveway location were all submitted as part of the previous scheme, which were approved by members in March 2020. In addition, the Section 106 contribution was also agreed by members. It equates to £8,491. That's based on the adopted SPG and the formula within that. So it has been worked out based on the size of the dwellings. And it's also obviously for one net increase in dwelling, not the because one of them is a replacement dwelling, so you've already got one dwelling on the site there. So those are issues really that have been well aired and have been resolved. The building regs will mean that the houses will need sprinklers, so that's in answer to Councillor Smith's one of the other queries. And in terms of the bond along the road, in terms of protecting the road, that's a matter for highways. That's outside the scope again of the planning application. Appreciate it's taken a long time for Waynfield Lane to be resurfaced, but that's within the gift of the Highway Authority really to monitor the situation, and if there's any damage to the road as a result of any construction works, then the Highway Authority can take action against the developer to ensure monies are paid to repair the road in effect. So that's not really a matter for this forum here. Again, especially in that we've agreed the scheme back in March 2020, subject to the foul drainage details, which are what we need to be debating today. Thank you.
Right, that's good explanation for all of that, Phil. It's just that I hadn't, I knew we were just more or less on board with to see to the drainage today. It's just that there's quite a few things that questioned at the last committee. We have several hands up waiting to speak. So Councillor Alan Davis first, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, we are debating the drainage scheme here, yes. And all of the agencies that require their approval have approved this scheme. Indeed. So I can see no reason why we would not pass this application, and I move approval, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Davis. Councillor Murphy next, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's what I anticipated Councillor Davis was going to say, so I shall second it.
Thank you. And if NRW had any questions over anything, I'm pretty certain that they would have raised them. So they obviously have been very thorough indeed, and it hasn't been rushed through. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Smith, I'll give you fair play and ask, is there anything you'd like to sum up on this, as you would do if you were in County Hall?
No, I thank you very much, members, for considering. Thank you very much. What's intriguing me is how I missed the meeting last March, because I don't think I was trying out the National Health Service then, but for the life of me, I've been pretty consistent over the years. So how I set up there, I do not know. Thank you, members, for giving consideration.
Thank you for being able to join us this afternoon. So it has been moved by Councillor Davis for approval and seconded by Councillor Murphy. If nobody else wishes to comment, I will go straight to the vote. No more hands are raised, so please could I have the vote in the chat bar?
I've not got a chat bar. Oh.
We've had 11 responses back now, Chair.
Yeah, I couldn't find mine. I couldn't find it in mine, Madam Chair.
No, me, Madam Chairman, so I'm for approval.
Councillor Higginson, how do you wish to vote?
For approval.
Right, thank you. So that sounds as though, Denzel, is that unanimous?
Yes, that looks like it's unanimous for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Denzel, for that. And thank you all members. That is the end of our applications for today, but we do have one appeal decision. Who wishes to comment on that? And then after we've done that, after we've finished recording, if all members would kindly stay on board, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, is there not another application?
No, I did say
15 houses or something.
I believe perhaps you weren't on board when I said in the beginning that had been withdrawn.
Sorry, yeah, sorry, I must have missed that. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Chairman.
Councillor Clark?
With your permission, can I just address the application that's been withdrawn this afternoon? Not knowing it until I came here, I've been to site and I had quite a lot to think and say about it. And it strikes me that if we could deal with what I was going to say in the interim till it does come back for approval, it would save time. And with the permission of my fellow members on this committee, can I suggest that the delegated panel will have a look at it in the interim?
Well, as that wasn't now on the agenda, Councillor Clark, perhaps we could discuss it after we finished recording with the members.
OK, thank you.
Wendy, you will let me know when we finish recording, please. After we've done we have to comment first of all on the appeal decision.
Certainly, I'll let you know.
Right, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. This was an appeal decision that was, again, the appeal was dismissed, so it's another one that we were successful on. I don't think we've lost an appeal now for almost a year, I think.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
Yeah, so this area of green space on the right hand side of the junction there, the householder, and I can understand why perhaps he wanted to do it. He wanted to fence it in so that it was more defensible space, because I think some of it's maintained by himself, so he cuts it, and it would probably to reduce littering. problem with that was it would enclose a pleasant green space, which has a sense of openness and a sense of place at the moment, and reflects what's going on the other side of the junction there. So we didn't want a 2 metre high or 1.8 metre high close boarded fence coming along a large part of that frontage right next to the footway. We felt it would reduce the sense of space and character, so we refused it, and the inspector wholeheartedly agreed that that would reduce the sense of placemaking and the sense of character in the area. So so that wasn't allowed.
But it wasn't in his ownership anyway, was it, Phil?
I think he was seeking to buy. He was either seeking to buy it from our estates team, from recollection.
But it wasn't already in his ownership to do with as he pleases.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't. Certainly not all of it was in his ownership. Put it that way. There might have been a fringe area there which he might have had ownership of, but a large part of it was owned by estates. So there were two dimensions. One, he needed planning permission. One, he wanted to buy the land off estates. So obviously the planning issue came first, and then if he wasn't successful, then he wouldn't approach estates
exactly.
And buy the land. So yeah, so that one is that in a nutshell.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Phil. I'll leave that with you now, Wendy.